In the beginning, there was me, Dr. Roger Gewolb. Welcome to another episode of The Gospel According to Dr. Roger, the show where I try to have some of the most interesting people on the planet talk about some of the most interesting stories and issues that we face. The BBC scandal is nothing less than a scandal where, we have a supposedly beloved institution that we pay for. They're not selling us anything. They only exist because we pay for them. Using our money to set up, on the one hand, something called BBC Verify, where, unlike anyone else, we go out and we make sure the facts we're telling you are correct and true. And yet they've garnered over recent years, certainly, a reputation for just simply reporting a very slanted, let's say, at the least, version of the news on various stories, especially things like Gaza and President Trump and the rest. And we then discover that they've actually doctored between 40 and 50 minutes of President Trump's speech to make him say something that he didn't say and cast him in a light that is untrue, it appears. And that's just so shocking. I don't know what to do, but it's a great example of the world that we live in today, how we are being gaslit, how we are being manipulated, how we are pawns in the hands of the powers that actually run things, whoever they may be, the Jews, the Muslims, the Illuminati, the Martians. I've heard Davos, Schmavos, Wavos. I've heard everything. Everybody's got a conspiracy theory about who is actually running things. But it certainly looks to a very large degree like a very leftish, woke influence is upon us. And one of the most shocking things I've come across is what is happening in schools with teachers and in institutions and government bodies and NGOs and, well, let's just call them public or quasi-public places, shall we? Where the influence of feminism, the female energy, Shakti energy, which is wonderful, but not at the expense of male energy, um, is ruling our lives. And children in schools are being taught to embrace feminine energies and feminine values, and that masculinity is wrong, and that young boys are actually defective young girls. This is an incredible story. And it came to our attention because of a tweet posted by a Canadian uh, uh, influencer, poster, whatever, who calls himself Wokal Distance. His real name, I believe, my AI tells me, is Michael Young, and he's very prolific, but he wrote a very, very long tweet, which was just breathtaking and amazing, and it's no surprise that it's gone viral. So I had to find somebody particularly to speak about something this powerful and insidious and complex. I had to find somebody to match that story to join me and talk about it. And I think I have, in that I've invited a wonderful lady named Vidhya Siva, who goes by her married name of Vidhya Hare, Hoerr. She's married to an American who is a wrestler and a stand-up comedian. And I think he probably knocks the you-know-what out of you if you don't laugh at his jokes. It's an interesting combination, right? She's quite an amazing woman. She has a master's in mathematics and physics from Warwick University. And she has a fascination with complex systems and analytical thinking, which first took her into finance, where she dealt with credit derivatives at Deutsche Bank, and then moved into trading commodity, over-the-counter commodity derivatives. She then uh, left the city to raise her children, actually to homeschool them, and then retrained as a teacher. And she taught at a leading state school for several years. So she's an all-around fascinating woman with a really remarkable background and a mind that I believe can address an issue like this. And so I'm really looking forward to her take on what wocal distance is telling us has been done to our public institutions, if I can collectively grab them by all of that, and the frightening, sickening influence that it is having and going to have on the youth of today who will be running this planet tomorrow. So let me introduce you to Vidhya Hare. Welcome, Vidhya. It's very nice to see you. We've met before, and I'm very impressed with you. And I just thought that you would make probably an ideal person to discuss this very important issue. We're already contending with the terrible shock that the BBC, with its BBC Verify department that checks every fact to make sure we're not misled, but is accused by many, yeah, of doing nothing but misleading us on so many stories,
Yes.
actually goes way beyond that with the incredibly respected, although it's been criticized a number of times, Panorama program
Mm.
for actually, dare I say, almost criminally doctoring footage and reporting it to us as the truth
Mm.
about President Trump, and making a person say something and appear to intend something that they neither said nor intended. It's enough to shock us with that, but to find out that underneath all of this, we are being undermined in what I'm collectively calling our public institutions, schools and government offices and NGOs, by this wave of, I don't like calling it feminism because that's another thing, but Shakti or feminine energy, or I mean that masculinity is wrong, and this sickening nonsense that anything male is defective
Mm.
is very offensive, and yet it's not creeping, it has crept into our world. So perhaps you can tell us then your thoughts about this. You have been following this development with shock and horror, you said, and you were particularly affected by this very long tweet that's gone viral. So maybe you can tell us a bit about the tweet and its author, and how people can find it and read it for themselves. Or maybe what we'll do is attach it to the a video that we publish here, so people can read it. But it's not really about the tweet. He describes the phenomenon very well. But tell us your thoughts about, as an ex-teacher, particularly, what's actually happening.
So this tweet is someone's reflections on the state of the education sector in the US. Um, but as we've seen over the years, what happens in the US does filter through to the UK. Um, and he reflects upon school classrooms being full of left wing messaging, left wing ideology, I suppose far left. And it's very much a chosen partisan messaging that's displayed in classrooms. So you've got the LGBTQIA representation with the progress flag, the rainbow flag, and he was showing pictures of BLM, Black Lives Matter, writings on the walls. And it was really commenting on his experience with his 11-year-old son in schools in America, and what he has discovered.
And what did he discover exactly?
Well, he posits that it's that there's well he has seen a lot of pressure put on boys, specifically, um, in classrooms, that masculinity is seen as bad, unwanted, masculinity being their perhaps more competitive nature, their physical nature, um, in favour, he posits, of a more feminine um, energy, as you put it earlier. So showing empathy, almost weaponizing empathy in the classroom. And empathy in of itself is a great trait, but he says it's being exploited in the classroom, and it's being put above other traits like resilience and perhaps conflict resolution. That boys might have a way of resolving conflict amongst themselves that's very different from the way girls traditionally do it.
Well, of course they do, sure.
Yeah, so for example, fighting, um, you'd be very quickly labeled as bad and put into tension, even if you were just physically defending yourself from an attacker. They're both seen as equally naughty or equally bad, when one started the fight and one was just defending. So it's really this feeling that has been put onto boys that they're not allowed to be themselves. They have to very much conform to sort of this new ideology and this new speak. Girls are too, though, from my observations. All children are. He posits that, well, I think that perhaps girls fit into that regime a little bit better in the classroom, because they're not so physical or aggressive in their play when they're young. So perhaps it suits them better to just be given this formulaic way of dealing with people, interacting with people. And it's not so natural for boys, so they have a harder time with it.
And this is criticized.
Yes, this is criticised, although he does seem to blame feminism for that, whereas I think it's more a struggle between the institutional coercive powers that are left wing at the moment, very left wing, and the individual. I don't see it as much as females against males.
Yeah,
I see
that's a
all children oppressed by this.
that's a good point.
Mm.
And what else? And what effect is this actually having on families? You say America, it's not happening here.
It is happening here to a degree. We don't have such. I don't think we have. I looked at his photos. If you see it online, there were lots of flags up on the wall. And we do have rainbow flags put up, um, and other flags not so much. So the balance is not there in England schools either. But I don't think it's as extreme as some of the things we've seen coming from the schools in the US.
So will it come over here, do you think? Will this left I mean, it's neither left nor feminism is the right word. It's something more insidious than that. I mean, because there's some very good things about feminism and some very good causes that the left embraces.
Yes.
This is something a lot more evil. This is racist. This is saying that males are defective human beings, and it's like saying that black people are this or
Mm.
Muslims or Hindus or Jews or whatever
Yeah.
like you're Sri Lankan, so all Sri Lankans are defective.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
not as good as Indians. I mean, it's racism
Yeah. Yeah.
to say that, and to teach young boys that is on a par with all the complaints about the Palestinian books talking about the Israelis, so
Mm.
that school children are
Mm.
made to read. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're right in that regard. It's really not left wing, it's not liberal, it's not
Feminist.
supporting, yeah, it's not supporting individual choice. It's really pushing one worldview, and it's a few select causes. Um,
And what are those causes?
the predominantly the LGBTQIA
Plus.
gene
Well, you got to say plus.
plus.
Yeah,
Yeah, predominantly that machine. It's the most, I think it's the most effective of all the causes in dismantling our our values and our systems in society so that institutions can garner more control of individuals and of families.
explain that a bit more deeply,
Bit
would
more.
you?
So it turns, for a start, it uses language and corrupts language for its gain. So at its most fundamental, it says men can be women, women can be men,
Right.
in the literal sense. And that's just factually not true and will never be true. In reality, all you have is a male, a man, wishing society to believe he's a woman, or a woman wishing for society to believe she is a man. Um, but this machine is being pushed into all our institutions as as if it is true that a man can be a
Why? I
woman.
mean, why are these people pushing that?
I think it is just a force of dismantling our systems and making us constantly question ourselves and seek to another authority on how to behave and how to relate to other people and
In
how to,
other words, I don't know who I'm, especially if I'm a young kid, if I'm 7 years old. So I don't know who the hell I am or what I'm doing.
yeah,
So whatever teacher tells me, I'll now just follow slavishly.
yes, yeah,
It's a control thing.
it is, yeah, and
And it begins by confusing people about who and what they are and where they're going.
yes. And then when you're in an office and you're told you have to use specific pronouns for a student. So in my example, I was a teacher. If some children had these difficulties where they were unsure of were uncomfortable in their bodies for whatever reason, and I worked at a boys' school, so there were a couple of boys who took on the identity of being a girl. If we were expected to use those pronouns, she, her, for the boys, we were sort of, and I understand it in that dynamic because you're the teacher, they're the pupil, and there's a power imbalance. We want to support all our students. So, how do you best do that is the question, and you shouldn't be stopped from critiquing how. It's not necessarily where we have to agree to pretend they're girls. It might actually be they need some counselling and need to be more comfortable in their own bodies as boys.
Right.
Um, but then this shift where we had to use those pronouns without
You
question.
you were told by your superiors that you had to.
Yes, yes. Um,
So little Billy thinks,
or it's not that we were told that we had to, it's more that so and so is going by these pronouns now.
right.
It was sort of
So
implied
by
he's
implication,
expected.
yeah,
Yes,
implication, little Billy
yeah,
now thinks he's Sally, and so you need to call him she and her,
yes,
and they're just implying that that's what you need to do.
yes.
Well, it's the same thing as being told, just
Yes, yes,
yeah,
it is. And on the one hand, of course, as a teacher, you want to do what's expected because you believe that everything's been considered thoroughly and it has been determined that this is the best way to move forward with this child at this point in time. But on the other hand, you are being forced to manifest beliefs that you do not hold true. So it is a human right that you can have your own beliefs and philosophies and religion, but I'm being forced, or we're all being forced, to believe in gender identity ideology when we're
so
being expected to use those pronouns.
so questioning gender belief ideology, as you call it,
Mm.
is, pardon me, the first step to destabilizing one's identity, which is done, you are saying, in order to give the person fomenting that control over the other person, and to give groups mass control over all of us by
Yes.
introducing all of this, what rhymes with lollocks and begins with a B. By introducing all of that, they then can control the populace, the
Yes.
population.
Yes.
That's your theory. I think it's a pretty good theory. I think
And
it's
we
pretty
care
good.
for we care for one another on an individual basis. Of course, we don't want to offend others. We don't want to make them feel more uncomfortable in their own skin. But
Yeah.
that's exploited by the institutions at large, including our government and the BBC.
And so what do the other teachers feel about this? What do the mid-level people who are in charge of the teachers and report to the headmasters and headmistresses? I mean, you've got the boss controlling things. They want absolute control, so they confuse the kids and even you a bit about who and what you are.
Mm.
What does everybody beneath that boss feel about this? It's a load of BS, and they just have to go along with it, or do they actually buy into it in due course?
I think I think in the world of teaching in the UK, the majority do buy into it, or have done. Um,
Yeah,
However, I was lucky in the sense that I worked at one of the top schools in the UK, and I don't know if it's a result of that or not, but several of the female teachers in private conversations um, revealed to me that they don't buy into this.
right,
They do go along with it because that's what's required. Um, but it did give me some relief to hear that,
sure.
you
You
know,
weren't alone. You weren't
I
alone.
wasn't alone. And, if we're teaching at such a high level and it's, what's right, what's wrong, where's the evidence, all of our critical thinking and analysis needs to be applied to gender identity ideology and it falls flat on its face.
Yeah.
So the two can't be true. You can't be an expert in academia.
Did these other teachers? I mean, did you not all get together and think about, revolution?
Um, it was more a quiet revolution, I
Well,
think.
any kind. Just saying we're not going to do this. This
I
is
think
ridiculous.
hmm, I, th- I think some teachers have. There was one teacher, not at that school, a different school, but he was fired. So the ramifications for sticking your head above the parapet are too high at the moment.
Right.
But there was a quiet revolution in that at that specific school I taught at anyway, you did have some autonomy within the classroom. So how you brought these topics to students was, you could steer it and you could put it forward to the students in a more balanced way rather
Okay.
than a given, you know.
Okay.
And it is in our law. We do have the laws backing us in that schools must not be partisan.
Yeah.
They must be politically impartial.
But
And
but still not so far. It doesn't go so far as to stamp on utter nonsense.
yes,
I
yeah.
mean, this little boy is clearly not a girl. I mean, he might as well identify with a horse, you
Mm,
know.
mm,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, unless, of course, somebody is trans and wants to change their actual sexuality and have surgery and go through that whole process. Yeah, I mean, you have to respect somebody's wishes in that, but that is more of a psychological medico thing as well
Mm,
as simply a social acceptance
mm,
sort of issue. I mean, comparing pronouns, I guess these people would say, "Oh yes, Dr. Roger, but pronouns are just the first step, don't you see?" So then,
mm.
it's kind of hard to argue with. But I would imagine the percentage of of young people who start with insisting on pronouns and end up actually having their sex changed physically
Mm,
is a very, very small percentage indeed.
mm.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, you can't change your sex no matter how many operations you have.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
gender, or whatever it is. I
yes,
confuse. I
yes.
get, I mean, there are 37 different genders or something.
Mm,
I get lost with some of this stuff, but the
mm,
basic point is that I guess a boy who grows up to have surgery or chemicals or something to have a girl's body is a legitimate thing for somebody to do if that's what they want to go through.
yeah, if they want to go through that, I'm
And then
I'm mixed on it though because
I would have no problem calling that person she or her.
I still would because I don't recognize any man as a woman, because they're
Okay,
not. It doesn't matter how much they change their bodies.
right,
They'll never be fully a woman, and certainly they would not have been a girl from birth. They wouldn't have the experience. They still wouldn't have menstruation, childbirth,
right,
menopause. They wouldn't have these rites of passage in a way,
right. I
towards
see what you're saying. Yeah.
um, and also they would. I'm a little bit. I'm concerned for everybody who wants to have that level of modification to their
So
body.
with such a hard line view, and I call it hard line because it just, you're drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be, is that why you stopped teaching? I mean, it must be incredibly frustrating to have to live with this
Mm,
set of rules,
yeah. It
uh,
wasn't
how,
too, wasn't too bad.
however gently they're applied, but know that you've got to come in and do these things that you find absolutely abhorrent.
Hmm. It wasn't too bad at my school at all.
Yeah, as you said.
Luckily for me. But you do constantly live with a niggling to your conscience that
Yeah, yeah.
in your better judgment, what you see as your better judgment, that these children are actually being harmed by this
Harmed,
ideology.
absolutely. Now, let me ask you a
You
question.
can't, you're restrained, you can't do anything about it.
Understood. Let me ask you a question. You came to this teaching after homeschooling your children
Mm.
from the city where you were a high-powered derivatives trader and rocket scientist, financial analyst, and the rest. How would your friends in the city, how would your colleagues in the city feel about all this?
Hmm. I've actually got quite I've got quite rational, sensible allegiances with friends and colleagues.
Yeah,
So most of them go along with all this sort of what you call DEI in America. Um,
Really?
these initiatives, they go along with it in the office because they have to. It's their work.
Oh, you mean
It's
it's
their
just
living.
it's as bad in the city, in the financial world,
Yes, it is. Yes. Um,
or as good, depending on how you see it. Yeah,
but but they don't believe men can be women, women can be men.
right,
So it's refreshing. Although not every one of my friends is that way, and not all of my friends and family believe the same.
right.
Yeah.
But so there's tolerance for this even in the financial world as well.
Mm,
These people are happy for their kids to attend. I mean, these people working in the city that live in very expensive homes and have expensive lifestyles and children who are privileged, they're happy for them to go to schools and be taught that they can be girls if they're boys and vice versa. They
yeah.
don't mind. They don't mind that.
Well, they mind it to a degree, but I think we all think we'll be immune to it, or our children will be relatively resilient to it, and
It's
that
for other.
we can combat it within the home.
It's for other people. It's other people's problems.
Yeah, but I think it is somewhat naive. I think it does underestimate the power of the teenage years and the institutions to pull children away from their families. I mean, even in California, there are many schools that are hiding this social transition of children, where they adopt a new name, feminine if they're boys or masculine if they're females, adopting a new name and new pronouns with at school, but they keep that secret from the parents.
Sorry, explain. I've not heard about this, or it rings a small bell, but tell us more. In California, there's schools.
Yeah,
uh,
so take a male child, for example. He is confused about who he is and he wishes to adopt a female identity. So he doesn't disclose it to his parents, but he is open about it at school. And the school faculty treat him as if he's a girl. He's got a girl's name. He'll use she, her pronouns, or they will use she, her pronouns for him. And
He keeps a dress in his locker at school that he
perhaps
can put on.
perhaps feminine clothes in the locker. And then the teachers and the leaders, school leaders, do not share this with the parents. So he'll get changed again when he goes home and pretend to be a boy when he's, or be a boy when he's at home. So this is really not healthy to have two beings, two personalities, two very
Good grief, no. But
different.
how do they get away with it? It must break some California state laws.
I know, I don't know. They argue that, oh, the child might be abused for it at home. But if there's no evidence to suggest that the child is at risk, then parents need to know. And even if there is a risk, then children's services need to be involved. But the parents should still know. Parents should always know.
Good grief. And there are a lot of schools like this,
I think there are, yeah.
just in California or elsewhere.
I think it's dotted around the US. Yeah, there's a lot of wild stories that you can find. And they're all in reputable newspapers. You can find these stories. So,
My goodness. So where is this all going to end up, Vidya?
well, I think there's been a lot of noise from this movement the last 10 to 15 years. Um, but the last 3 years, at least, there's been a there's been a resistance in the UK since since the early 2000s. It hasn't gotten anywhere until recently, maybe in the last 3 to 5 years. Women have been taking legal action, holding bodies to account. So most recently we had the the group called For Women Scotland, who brought a case against the Scottish government regarding female representation on boards. And that, obviously they were defending that female had to mean women, biological women, people born female.
So there was a position, their position was that a trans woman, a man who had become a woman or wanted to become a woman, couldn't sit on a board of directors.
Correct. Whereas the Scottish government was arguing that trans women could be counted as part
Well,
of that
I, I,
female
I, I
representation
should, I
on
should
board.
think so. I should think so.
Mm.
What possible reason could there? I sit on several boards, and I identify with Martian. I'm Martian. So, why would that make any difference? Whatever somebody wants to call themselves. If they're insane and delusional, they may not make a great board member, but how could anybody propose that they shouldn't be a director of a company?
It's this. So this, I don't know if we're on the same page, but the government, Scottish government, was saying, so if you had to have 50-50 women and men on a board.
Oh, they said that.
Yeah, so for example, if you proposed that you had to have 50% women, 50% men on a board, that trans women could be included and counted towards the representation for females. So in
I see.
theory, you could have 10 men on your board, five of whom are men that identify as men, and five are men that identify as women.
Well, it all starts with the ridiculousness of saying how many men and women you have to have on a company board of directors. That's absurd.
Yeah.
What you need on a company board of directors is, if it's an engineering company, good engineers and then good accountants and good lawyers and good derivatives traders like you and good. Yeah, that's just stupid interference in my book.
Maybe.
So that's why it all goes.
Yeah.
That's why it all goes wrong. That's why it all goes. What's up.
Mm,
That's really absurd. I hadn't heard that one.
yeah.
So
So,
where's it going to end? It's
well,
going to
so
get worse and worse.
the group, yeah, I know but that group For Women Scotland had to fight for years to get a conclusion on the matter, and they won the court case. Then there was an appeal, and they lost, and then they appealed again, and they won. Eventually, it went to the Supreme Court, and they won. So April this year, it was the law, the Equalities Act was clarified in England. As women like myself have always, if you just read it, it's clear. But it took those women taking this case to the Supreme Court for it to be declared again in law very clearly that woman means biological woman, as in adult human female.
Will we ever get back to a point where that is the case? And, institutions and courts will stop trying to force us to accept that a man who says he's a woman is not a woman? Or is there a valid case for that? Personally, if a man wants to call himself a woman, I have a member of my family who is transitioning. I don't know exactly how far she is, but I'm happy to call her she, even though most of her life I've known him as he. It makes no difference to me. But will they at least get to the point where they're going to stop passing these laws where you could have 10 men on a board? It just gets kind of silly, doesn't it?
Yeah, the sad thing about it, the last maybe 20 years, is that they haven't been passing laws to allow these things. They've just done it. They've just done it by stealth. So we've got these lobby groups for example, that go into institutions and appeal to to the editors of newspapers, the head teachers, and safeguarding leads of schools, um, talking about the difficulties of children and adults who are uncomfortable in their bodies and want to identify otherwise, and that way they've gathered ground in making changes within all these institutions and without requiring any laws.
Okay.
But women, when we send out complaint letters or ask for a meeting to discuss the impacts on women within the workforce or within schools or girls within schools, those meetings are rejected, denied, complaints are fobbed off. So this is why a lot of women are taking now legal action to hold companies and governments and services to account. And we are slowly making ground. So I think we will find a nice balance at some point. I'm hopeful, and I am seeing positive changes being made. Yeah, but the pronoun thing is pronouns is a difficult thing, because once you say a man is a woman and refer to him as she, it becomes very difficult to say, no, she can't come in the women's toilets. No, she can't come into the women's changing rooms. No, she can't participate in this women's boxing match, as we saw in the Olympics most recently. So that's my difficulty with
You think that allowing the pronouns thing opens the door to things that shouldn't happen?
it. Yes, it does.
Uh-huh.
Just
Okay.
psychologically, it does.
Okay. I don't know.
Sort of
I
in
haven't
your
had
own
it.
head, you categorize the person as a woman. Once
Yeah.
you perceive them as a man,
Yeah.
intuitively, instinctively, and then you have to sort of rejig in your own mind that they're a
Yeah.
woman, and then
But I
because
think,
they're a woman, you allow them into women's only spaces.
but can't we draw lines? I mean, if somebody wants you to call them she and her, I don't give a damn. But if they want to be in a boxing match with other women, I do give a damn, and I wouldn't permit that. So you draw the line.
Yeah,
But
we
the big
need.
thing for me, and this story on this program today, is about children and teachers.
Mm,
And I have to say, now this member of my family, this relative of mine, by marriage, uh, made up her mind to start acting as a woman, um, at an age where she was mature enough to do so.
mhm,
So I've got no problem with that. She can wear all the frilly dresses and do all the girly things she wants, and
mm,
I'll respect her choices. She's a grown-up adult. But it's teaching kids to do that
mm,
when they, don't even know who they are when they're 6 years old.
mm,
That's what fires me up. That's what I find
mm.
really insidious.
Yeah, yeah. That's the egregious impact of this ideology. It's largely on children, and in the States they put them on horrible puberty blocker drugs.
Oh, well, here too, the
It's
the
horrifying.
horrible Tavistock Clinic.
Yes, yeah. And then to see women having mastectomies, taking their breasts off, it's appallingly sad.
Sure is.
And they don't know what they're losing because they're so young. They have no awareness of what they're losing.
It's just out of control.
Hmm.
Okay, well, look, I mean that's really been very, very enlightening and rewarding, and I thank you very much. And we'll have you back to talk about this some more. It's been great.
Right.
So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this platform to share my views.
We will give it to you again very soon.
Thank you, Roger.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.